Happy Friday, creative writers. We are going to jump into our next activity with poetry. And this one is something that you're already pretty familiar with. I mean, yes, you've been pretty familiar with a lot of the things we've been doing. But this one I think you learned from really early on in elementary school. And it's super fun to play with. And for a lot of poets, today's concept of figurative language is really where they have a lot of fun. Like communicating ideas that are, normal everyday ideas in a very fresh way, making people think about them differently just because of the way they're using figurative language, kind of suggesting something deeper about an object or an idea or an experience. And so the PDF that I'm attaching for you and that I have up on my screen here is just a basic overview. Most of you probably know all of these things already, but I don't want to ever assume that people understand what I'm talking about. I want to make sure I give you resources if you need them. So remember, figurative language is just language that it's not meant to be taken literally. It's suggesting something deeper. So, if I said this is a desk, if I was holding on or pointing to a desk, that's literal. It really is a desk. If I said something like this is your portal, to knowledge or something like that, that would be figurative. It's not literally that, but it's representing more. And that's what figurative language is, which is why it's a perfect tool in poetry. So your common types are right here. You can certainly go over those on your own. I don't need to read them word for word to you. If you do have questions about them, please let me know. But for the most part, given that you're all high school students, you should know these types of figurative language already, and there are examples for you. So just get, refamiliarized with these if you need to. And then the thing I want you to consider at the bottom here, a lot of us have used metaphors before in our writing, but a workshop I went to a couple of years ago really made a great point about how novice writers often mix metaphors. And a mixed metaphor means that in one poem, you're creating one metaphor that's focused on one thing, and then you shift and you create a different metaphor, so, that's focused on something completely different, and it kind of undermines what you meant in your first metaphor. So you have to be really careful that if your purpose of your poem is to convey a certain idea, don't accidentally create two different metaphors that contrast each other or undermine your overall point. So that's what this is saying here. Just be really careful about mixing metaphors. It's not saying that you can't use more than one. It's just, the way that you're using them, they have to support the same idea. So think about that. That's just a word of caution. And then on the second page, these are your exercise options for today. I've actually posted 3 documents for you, Google documents, that you could do if you'd like to. Remember, you only need to do one activity. You do not need to do them all. Just try using figurative language in whatever way you feel is best for you, based on how proficient you feel you are with figurative language. If you're feeling a little bit nervous about using figurative language in poetry and you really want to start small, start simply, I have a fill in the blank, simple activity for you. And I'll show you that right here, this beginner option. This just goes, item by item, right? So this is just you creating metaphors by filling in the blank, you creating similes by filling in the blank, you creating personification by filling in the blank, all the way through with hyperboles and then with symbolism. So if you're feeling like you're not really ready to write a poem with figurative language yet, but you want to really play around with figurative language, play around with the ideas, and maybe eventually, during workshop time, you might write a poem with figurative language, then I would say try this first if you're really nervous. And, do as many activities as you want on here. If you want to just do a couple here, a couple here, a couple here, that's fine. Just the idea is for you to get comfortable using figurative language. Now, similarly, if you feel fairly proficient, but still, again, you're just not quite sure that you want to tackle an original poem all by yourself using figurative language, this is the second fill in the blank activity. So this is still sort of an option for exercise 1, but it's a little bit more challenging than that first one that I showed you. So I've taken words out, right? So this could be a poem, just a free verse poem. There's no rhyme or rhythm or anything in it. And you can fill in whatever words you want knowing that you're trying to do that in a way that really shows strong use of figurative language and also helps the poem as a whole read cohesively, right? It reads fluently, it reads cohesively, it reads like a real poem. So think about this. And I think I referenced on that original sheet that it kind of could feel like Mad Libs, but obviously you want to try to have it be logical, whereas Mad Libs is supposed to be funny. This hopefully will be logical, and you can be really thoughtful about how you might want to fill in the blanks. And if you're going to do this activity, I also challenge you to try to be original, right? Try not to think of the obvious ways to fill in the blank. It might feel like, say it says wind whipped through. I mean, maybe immediately you think her hair or something like that. And you're like, no, I don't want that. So then maybe shift. What would be more unexpected that wind whipped through, right? Maybe it's her heart. Maybe it's not even something on a person at all. And maybe it's something not even in nature at all, right? So think about how you might be able to fill this in a way that, almost surprises you, even with the message that you could be sending. Sometimes we fall into really cool poetry by doing things like this. So that's another exercise. Now, if you go back to this original sheet, this original PDF, both of the things I just showed you sort of accommodate exercise 1. If you're feeling a little bit more advanced, if you're feeling like, you know what, Trem, I totally understand figurative language and I want to try to write an original poem that really leverages figurative language, then my challenge to you is to do either exercise 2, 3, or 4. Either focus on an object or an idea that is going to be symbolic throughout your entire poem and use that through the poem. Or you could create an extended metaphor. I've given you an example. Sylvia Plath's "Your" is an extended metaphor describing her unborn baby. She never tells you that that's what she's describing, but that's what she is describing. It could be really cool for you to imitate her style and imitate that approach of not actually saying what you're talking about, just using the extended metaphor. And she writes them as similes, right? And little known fact, similes are a type of metaphor. So, they kind of go together hand in hand. So if you want to imitate her poem, or even just do, be inspired by her poem and kind of do your own structure, but try to write an extended metaphor by comparing one thing to something else throughout the entire poem. Or lastly, exercise 4, if you'd like to try to personify something. I have attached a poem that personifies the moon throughout. And so if you want to gain inspiration from that, take some kind of object or idea and personify it, right? Give it human characteristics, make it a person. Often poets will capitalize that object or idea to make it known to readers that from the start that they are personifying it. And then obviously if you're having it perform actions, it's very clear that you're personifying it. So if you choose that one, take a look at that poem first for some inspiration. If you're stuck on ideas, you're not sure what to use for a metaphor, for symbolism, for personification, I've given you a little list of ideas that I've collected over time from workshops I've gone to or classes I've taken where we've done these activities and used one of these things. So if you're stuck, maybe get some inspiration from there. And you're going to see that you'll use this third document that I posted, which is the advanced option, where you're just going to go ahead and use this space right here to write your original poem that uses either symbolism, an extended metaphor, or personification really thoughtfully in a full poem. And your poem can be as many lines as you want, as many stanzas as you want, as long or as short as you want, as long as you're trying to play with figurative language. So I hope that is helpful for you. If you need anything else from me as you work on this, please don't hesitate to reach out. And then you'll be done with our work for the week. So I hope you have a fabulous weekend. Talk to you soon.